The Watchtower just published an article telling elderly Jehovah's Witnesses to maintain their joy while growing old. But here's the shocking part. They basically admit that many of these faithful ones are dying without seeing the paradise they were promised would come in their lifetime. After decades of false predictions about the end of the world, Watchtower is now doing damage control on an entire generation that they misled. You ready? Let's get into it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel where I examine Watchtower and Jehovah's Witnesses through the lens of someone who spent 4 decades inside that organization himself. Now, today we're dissecting a November 2025 Watchtower study article about maintaining joy in old age. But what we're really looking at is how the organization is scrambling to manage the disappointment of elderly members who spent their entire lives waiting for an Armageddon that never came. We'll examine every major claim, expose the hypocrisy, and reveal how they're trying to reframe their prophetic failures as something positive. Now, keep in mind that although I might quote the Bible as part of my rebuttal, this isn't a faith-based video. For my faith-based content that does not discuss Jehovah's Witnesses or the Watchtower, see the link to my other channel in the video description. Also, I want to thank one of my viewers, Robin Bass 9636, for pointing out this article to me in a comment on my last video where I show evidence that Watchtower is going to abandon the imminent Armageddon teaching. Much appreciated, Robin. Thank you very much. I'm always open to suggestions for material to cover, so feel free to leave your idea in a comment, or better yet, email me at jonathanlegepodcast@gmail.com. I get a ton of comments. I can't read them all, but I'll definitely see it if you drop it in an email. All right, let's get into it. The article starts by comparing elderly Jehovah's Witnesses to thriving trees that are, quote, beautiful, especially in God's eyes, end quote. The article states, quote, Jehovah sees the person behind the gray hair, and he appreciates the beautiful qualities of older ones, their endurance and loyalty, as well as their many years of faithful service to him. End quote. Now look, appreciating elderly people is wonderful. But let's talk about what's really going on here. These aren't just random elderly folks. These are people who've given their entire lives to an organization that repeatedly promised them they'd never grow old in this system. Remember, in 1969, the Awake magazine literally said, quote, if you are a young person, you also need to face the fact that you will never grow old in this present system of things. Why not? Because all the evidence and fulfillment of Bible prophecy indicates that this corrupt system is due to end in a few years. End quote. Those young people from 1969, they're now in their 70s and 80s. The very elderly ones this article is addressing. Online forums are filled with their stories. People who gave up college scholarships, careers, even having children because they truly believed they would never grow old in this system of things. The organization told them they'd never grow old, and now they're writing articles about how to maintain joy while growing old. The irony is staggering. The article mentions Sarah, Moses, and John as examples of how, quote, Jehovah often uses older ones to accomplish his purpose, end quote. The article states, quote, a person's advanced age does not decrease his value to Jehovah, end quote. That's a beautiful sentiment, and those are great biblical examples. But here's what they're not telling you. None of these Bible figures were promised by a human organization that they wouldn't grow old. They weren't told to skip college, avoid having children, or sell their homes because the end was coming in their youth. Now, according to jwfacts.com, love that site, cannot recommend it strongly enough, regarding the 1975 prediction, quote, many quit their jobs, sold their houses, and began witnessing full time. Their motto became, stay alive till 75, end quote. The Watchtower even commended those, quote, selling their homes and property and planning to finish out the rest of their days in this old system in the pioneer service, end quote. Now they're using biblical examples to normalize aging when they spent decades telling people they wouldn't age in this system. That's not just moving goalposts, that's pretending the goalposts never existed at all. Here's where it gets really revealing. Paragraph 7 states, quote, "Perhaps you are saddened by the possibility that the end of this system will not come in your lifetime." End quote. What? Stop right there. This is Watchtower essentially admitting their prophetic failures without actually admitting their prophetic failures. Why would elderly witnesses be saddened by the possibility that the end won't come in their lifetime? Because for decades they were absolutely promised that it would. Let me give you the exact quotes. In their 1966 book, Life Everlasting in Freedom of the Sons of God, they wrote, quote, "According to this trustworthy Bible chronology, 6,000 years from man's creation will end in 1975, and the seventh period of 1,000 years of human history will begin in the fall of 1975. End quote. The Kingdom Ministry of March 1968 said, quote, "Just think, brothers, there are only about 90 months left before 6,000 years of man's existence on earth is completed. The majority of people living today will probably be alive when Armageddon breaks out." End quote. But now, in 2025, they're telling these same people who were promised they'd see Armageddon in their youth, quote, "Try to remember that Jehovah is patiently waiting to bring an end to this wicked world." End quote. They're literally gaslighting an entire generation. They made the predictions, they set the dates, and now they're acting like God is just being patient. No acknowledgement of their false prophecies, no apology for misleading millions, just Jehovah's being patient. The article also discusses elderly ones losing their independence. Quote, "You may feel discouraged because you are losing a measure of your independence. This is especially true if you need the help of a caregiver or if you have to move in with one of your children." End quote. Now, here's what makes this particularly cruel. Many of these elderly witnesses don't have adequate retirement savings or pensions because the organization discouraged planning for the future. They were told the end was imminent, so why save for retirement? I also fell into that trap and did not put away for retirement, and it is a problem now I'm working through. Former witnesses have shared stories of how they sold their homes, quit their jobs, and gave up educational opportunities because they believed the end was so near. The Kingdom Ministry commended those, quote, selling their homes and property and planning to finish out the rest of their days in this old system in the Pioneer Service, calling it a fine way to spend the short time remaining before the wicked world's end. Quote, that's a direct quote from the May 1974 Our Kingdom Ministry. Now, these same people are struggling with poverty in old age, needing to move in with their children, children that may have been discouraged from having in the first place because the end was supposedly so close. The organization created the situation, and now they're offering platitudes about maintaining joy. And here's the problem. If their children followed Watchtower's guidance, they too are likely in poor financial straits and would struggle to help their parents for the same reason their parents are struggling themselves. I'm lucky that I developed a trade even though I didn't go to college, so we do okay, but I'm still working for retirement. When the article talks about accepting help from others and showing gratitude, they conveniently ignore a massive issue: shunning. Many elderly witnesses are completely cut off from family members who've left the organization. What kind of relationship is left? Is it even strong enough for the children to want to care for their elderly parents after being shunned, potentially for decades? The article then says, quote, "When you accept help from others, you allow them to feel the joy that comes from giving," end quote. But what about the adult children who would love to help their elderly parents, but can't because they've been disfellowshipped or marked as apostates, or simply can't afford it themselves because they, too, listen to Watchtower's horrible advice? According to their own literature from the Watchtower, October 2017, quote, "Despite our pain of heart, we must avoid normal contact with a disfellowshipped family member by telephone, text messages, letters, emails, or social media," end quote. Imagine being an elderly person who needs care, but half your family can't help you because the organization demands that you shun them. Even if the Shepherd the Flock of God Elders rulebook has a technicality in it that says they don't have to shun their family, it's just strongly encouraged. Since rank and file Jehovah's Witnesses aren't allowed to read that rulebook, they wouldn't know that, would they? In the public pages of the Watchtower, they're told to shun. The article completely ignores this reality while talking about accepting help. They've literally created a situation where elderly members have fewer people to help them because of their shunning policies and policies discouraging higher education and careers. Paragraph 11 encourages elderly ones to be a living library and share their knowledge with younger ones. It states, quote, ask them questions and then listen. Teach them why living by Jehovah's standards is always best and will make them happy, end quote. You know what's heartbreaking about this? These elderly ones are a living library, a library of the evidence that the organization's predictions don't come true. They could tell younger ones about 1914, when the organization said the end would come. They could talk about 1925, when Judge Rutherford promised that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob would be resurrected. They could share about 1975, when they sold their homes and quit their jobs. Even though they may not have been alive in 1914 and 1925, we studied those things in the Proclaimer's book back in the 1990s, so we all knew about it. But they can't share any of that today, can they? Because if they did, they'd be labeled apostates for speaking against the Watchtower. In fact, even the stuff that we studied in the 90s was whitewashed. Instead, they're encouraged to perpetuate the same false hopes to a new generation. It's a cycle of deception, and they're using elderly members as unwitting accomplices. The article quotes Isaiah 46:4 about God's promise to help older ones and states, quote, Jehovah always keeps his promises, end quote. Oh, really? Well, let's talk about promises. The Watchtower wrote in their May 1st, 1997 issue, quote, Jehovah God is the grand identifier of his true messengers. He identifies them by making the messages he delivers through them come true. Jehovah is also the great exposer of false messengers, end quote. By their own definition, what does it mean that none of their predictions have come true? They have a 100% failure rate on their date predictions. They've made failed predictions for 1878, 1881, 1914, 1918, 1925, 1975, and implied the end would come before the year 2000. Yet they had the audacity to claim that Jehovah always keeps his promises while representing an organization that has broken promise after promise to the elderly members this Watchtower is talking to. In paragraph 13, they say, quote, when we remember that a difficult situation is temporary, we can endure it more easily. And the Bible assures us that old age and poor health are temporary, end quote. This is probably the cruelest manipulation of all. Yes, from a biblical perspective, suffering is temporary, but these elderly witnesses were told they'd never experience old age at all. They weren't told old age was temporary, they were told it would not happen to them. The organization is reframing their failed predictions as if they always taught that some would grow old and die. But that's revisionist history. They explicitly taught that millions then living would never die. There's even a book with that exact title from 1920, Millions Now Living Will Never Die, and the famous Awake magazine from 1984, 1914, Generation That Will Not Pass Away. The last section of the article discusses how others can help elderly ones, talking about visiting, calling, and providing practical support. Those are all good things, absolutely. But notice what's missing? Any acknowledgement of the organization's role in creating the difficulties that these elderly ones are facing. There's no mention of establishing a fund to help those who depleted their savings because they were told the end was near. There's no apology for discouraging education and career planning. No acknowledgement that their shunning policies have separated many elderly ones from their own family's potential support. Instead, they put the burden on individual members to help, while the organization, which has billions in real estate and assets, offers nothing but empty words about maintaining joy, all the while hypocritically calling out other religions for the very thing they've done their entire existence, falsely predict the end of the world. In 2014, their own magazine stated, quote, religious leaders sometimes predict tragic worldwide events to warn mankind and gather followers. Needless to say, the world is still here, end quote. Yes, Watchtower really published that. It's in the May 2014 study edition of the Watchtower. They had the nerve to criticize other religions for failed predictions while never acknowledging their own. But this article isn't really about maintaining joy in old age, is it? It's about damage control. It's about managing the disappointment of an entire generation who gave everything to an organization that promised them something it couldn't deliver. And the saddest part, many of these elderly witnesses will read this article and blame themselves for their disappointment. They'll think they lack faith or joy, when the reality is they were systematically deceived by an organization that claims to speak for God and clearly does not. The real tragedy isn't growing old. It's growing old realizing you've been deceived, but being too invested or too afraid to acknowledge it. These elderly witnesses deserve better than platitudes about joy. They deserve honesty. They deserve an apology. They deserve acknowledgement of what was taken from them, not just their youth, but their opportunities, their relationships, and in many cases, their financial security. But they won't get any of that from the Watchtower. Instead, they get this article, a masterclass in gaslighting that reframes the organization's failures as God's patience and their victims' disappointment as a lack of faith. The fact that paragraph 7 essentially admits these ones might die without seeing the end after decades of being promised they wouldn't should be a wake-up call to every Jehovah's Witness reading that magazine or watching this video. But for many, the investment is too deep, the cost of leaving too high, and the fear of shunning too great. And that's exactly how the Watchtower wants it. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, please click like and subscribe to my channel. Be sure to share with anyone you think it might help learn the truth about the truth. And if you're still a Christian, check this out. I wanted to take a moment to tell you about my book, The Broken Mirror, Rediscovering Our True Nature in Christ. Readers call it a fantastic book where you will feel yourself discovering your identity in Christ. One reviewer praised it as 5-star material for the spiritual mystic or group Bible study. It's time to escape legalism and shame. Discover you're already God's beloved child with divine nature flowing through you. With what reviewers describe as excellent writing style and elegant prose like a campfire discussion with a knowledgeable and gifted raconteur, journey from Genesis to Revelation uncovering your true identity. This book shows how to access God's peace, wisdom, and strength from within. Your struggles become opportunities for divine light to shine through. Available in hardcover, paperback, Kindle, and audiobook. The link to the book is in the video description. May God bless your journey along His path for you.